Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant Echo, watching the stars drift past the viewport. The ship moved through space like a small fish in an endless ocean. Around her, the crew worked quietly at their stations. The soft hum of the engines filled the air. "Captain, we're approaching the target coordinates," said Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. His fingers danced across the holographic display. "Sensors are picking up something big ahead." Sarah nodded and moved to the center of the bridge. At 35, she was young for a deep space captain, but she had earned her position through skill and determination. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform showed the wear of long months in space. The Defiant Echo was not the largest ship in the human fleet, but it was one of the newest. 200 souls called it home as they explored the far reaches of space. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 2 centuries, and they were still considered newcomers by the older species. "Put it on the main screen," Sarah ordered. The viewport shimmered and changed to show what lay ahead. A massive structure hung in space, dark and ancient. It looked like a city that had been carved from a single piece of black stone. Towers and spirals reached out in all directions. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with an inner light. "My God," whispered Dr. Martinez from the science station. "It's huge. Readings show it's at least 50 kilometers across." Sarah felt her heart race. Discoveries like this were rare. Most of the galaxy had been explored by the older species long ago. Finding something new was like finding treasure. "Any signs of life?" she asked. "Negative, Captain," replied Torres. "But there's definitely power running through that structure, some kind of energy I've never seen before." Sarah walked closer to the screen. The structure was beautiful in a way that made her feel small. Whoever built it had been masters of their craft. The design was both alien and somehow familiar, like a half-remembered dream. "Doctor, what's your assessment?" she asked. Dr. Martinez was the ship's head scientist, a woman in her 50s who had spent her life studying alien cultures. She adjusted her glasses and studied the readings on her screen. "Based on the decay patterns and material composition, I'd say this structure is ancient, possibly millions of years old. The architecture doesn't match any known species in our database." "Could it be a space station? A ship?" Sarah asked. "Hard to say. The energy readings suggest it's still partially active. Captain, this could be the discovery of a lifetime. We need to investigate." Sarah knew she was right, but something made her cautious. They were far from human space, in a region claimed by the hegemony. The hegemony was a coalition of 12 advanced species that controlled this part of the galaxy. They did not like visitors. "Lieutenant, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we found. Include our exact position and sensor readings." "Yes." "Captain, should I request backup?" Sarah thought about it. The nearest human ships were weeks away. If they were going to explore this structure, they would be on their own. "Not yet. Let's see what we're dealing with first." She turned to the helmsman. "Take us closer, nice and slow. Keep sensors at maximum range." The Defiant Echo moved toward the ancient structure. As they got closer, more details became visible. The surface was covered in intricate carvings and what looked like windows or ports. Some sections appeared to be damaged, with holes torn in the hull, but other parts looked as new as the day they were built. "Captain," Dr. Martinez called out, excitement in her voice. "I'm picking up some kind of signal from the structure. It's very faint, but it seems to be responding to our presence." "Responding how?" "The energy patterns are changing. It's almost like it's waking up." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Ancient structures that woke up when approached were rarely good news. But the scientist in her was curious. This could be the find that changed everything. "Any signs of weapons or defensive systems?" "Nothing obvious. But with technology this old and advanced, who knows what they might have." Sarah made her decision. "All right, we'll dock with the structure. But I want full precautions. Shields. Up. Weapons ready. and I want a security team prepared for EVA. The next hour was spent carefully approaching the structure. They found what looked like a docking port on one of the lower sections. It was clearly designed for ships much larger than the Defiant Echo, but it would work. As they connected to the structure, the ship's systems detected an atmosphere on the other side of the airlock. It was breathable for humans, which was strange. Considering how old the structure was, Sarah suited up with the first exploration team. Commander Brooks, her security chief, and Dr. Martinez would accompany her. 3 other crew members rounded out the team. "Remember, we don't know what we're walking into," Sarah said as they gathered in the airlock. "Stay together. Watch each other's backs and be ready for anything." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond was a corridor that stretched into darkness. The walls were made of the same black material as the exterior, covered in the glowing symbols. The air smelled old, but clean. They moved forward slowly, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The corridor was wide enough for 6 people to walk side by side. The ceiling was high, suggesting the builders were either very tall or simply liked open spaces. After walking for several minutes, they came to a large chamber. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. In the center was a raised platform with what looked like a control console. But what really caught her attention were the walls. They were covered in murals depicting space battles, planetary systems, and beings that looked almost human. The style was alien, but the subjects were strangely familiar. "Doctor, are you seeing this?" Sarah asked. Dr. Martinez was already scanning the murals with her equipment. "These are incredible. The level of detail is amazing. And Captain, look at these figures. They look almost like us." Sarah moved closer to one of the murals. It showed a figure in what looked like a spacesuit, standing on the deck of a ship. The figure was definitely humanoid, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head in roughly the same proportions as a human. "Could this be convergent evolution?" she asked. "Possibly, or—" Dr. Martinez paused, studying her readings. "Captain, these murals are telling a story. Look at this sequence here. It shows these humanoid beings traveling between stars, building great cities, and fighting in massive space battles." Sarah followed the sequence Dr. Martinez was pointing to. It was like reading a comic book written by an alien civilization. The story seemed to span thousands of years, showing the rise and fall of a great empire. "What happened to them?" Sarah asked. "I don't know. But look at this final panel. The last mural showed the humanoid figures entering what looked like pods or chambers. Above them, stars went dark one by one. It looked like they were going to sleep while their civilization ended." "Hibernation?" Sarah suggested. "Maybe. Or something else entirely." Commander Brooks, who had been silent during the examination, suddenly spoke up. "Captain, we've got company." Sarah turned to see what he was looking at. Through the chamber's entrance, lights were moving in the corridor. Ship lights. Someone else had found them. "How many?" Sarah asked, her hand moving to her sidearm. "Hard to tell from here, but it's a big ship. Much bigger than ours." Sarah felt her stomach drop. They were alone, far from help, and now they had visitors. Given their location in hegemony space, these visitors were unlikely to be friendly. "All right, people, we need to get back to the ship, now." But as they moved toward the exit, the lights in the corridor grew brighter. Whatever ship had arrived was docking with the structure. And from the sound of footsteps echoing through the corridors, they were bringing friends. Sarah looked around the chamber one more time. Whatever secrets this place held would have to wait. Right now, survival was more important than discovery. "Move fast, but stay quiet," she whispered to her team. "We need to get back to our ship before they find us." But even as they hurried through the dark corridors, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their discovery would change everything. The question was whether they would live long enough to share it with the galaxy. Sarah and her team made it back to the Defiant Echo just as the alien ship finished docking. Through the viewport, she could see it was massive. easily 10 times the size of her vessel. The hull was silver and covered in sharp angles that seemed to cut through space itself. She recognized the design from her academy training. It was a hegemony warship. "Captain on the bridge," announced Lieutenant Torres as Sarah hurried onto the command deck. The rest of her team scattered to their stations, while Commander Brooks took his position at tactical. "Report," Sarah ordered, still breathing hard from their rapid return. "Single hegemony cruiser, righteous verdict. They've been trying to contact us for the past 10 minutes. The commander is demanding to speak with you immediately." Sarah straightened her uniform and tried to look calm. Dealing with the hegemony required careful diplomacy. They were known for their pride and their strict interpretation of galactic law. "Put them through. Main screen." The viewport shimmered and showed the bridge of the alien ship. The commander was a Seltani, one of the hegemony's founding species. He stood nearly 3 meters tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were large and golden, and they held no warmth as they fixed on Sarah. "I am High Commander Zethka of the hegemony vessel Righteous Verdict," his voice boomed through the speakers. The translation system made his words sound formal and cold. "You are in violation of hegemony space. State your purpose here immediately," Sarah stepped forward, keeping her expression neutral. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Defiant Echo. We are conducting a peaceful exploration mission. We had no intention of violating your territory." "Ignorance is not an excuse," Zethka replied sharply. "This system belongs to the hegemony. By ancient right, all discoveries made within our borders are our property. You will surrender any artifacts or data you have collected and submit to detention." "Commander, we are willing to cooperate," Sarah said carefully. "But as representatives of humanity, we request safe passage to neutral space. We can discuss any territorial disputes through proper diplomatic channels." Zethka's 4 arms crossed over his chest in what Sarah recognized as a gesture of disdain. "Humans presume too much. You have been part of the galactic community for barely 2 centuries. The hegemony has ruled this region for over 10,000 years. You have no right to negotiate." Behind Zethka, Sarah could see other aliens moving around the bridge. She spotted a Krathan with its insect-like features and what looked like a void walker, a species she had only seen in textbooks. This was clearly an important mission for them to have so many species represented. "Commander, perhaps we can reach a compromise," Sarah tried again. "We are scientists, not soldiers. Our only interest is in expanding knowledge." "Your interests are irrelevant," Zethka snapped. "You have 30 minutes to transfer all data regarding the ancient structure and surrender your ship for inspection. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. This is the only warning you will receive." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Sarah staring at the dark screen. Around her, the bridge fell silent. She could feel the weight of 200 lives depending on her next decision. "Options?" she asked quietly. Commander Brooks checked his tactical display. "They outgun us 20-1. Their shields alone could probably stop everything we've got. Running isn't really an option either. They're faster than us." Dr. Martinez spoke up from her station. "Captain, before you decide anything, you need to see what we found in that structure. The data we collected. It changes everything." Sarah turned to her. "What do you mean?" "The symbols on the walls, the genetic markers we detected in the atmospheric samples. Captain, I think those murals show human history, or at least the history of humanity's ancestors." "That's impossible. Humans evolved on Earth. We have the fossil record to prove it." "The fossil record shows when modern humans appeared on Earth," Dr. Martinez corrected. "But there are gaps, missing links. What if some humans left Earth millions of years ago? What if that structure is proof of an ancient human civilization?" Sarah felt the world shift around her. "You're saying the builders of that structure were human?" "I'm saying they were close enough to human that the genetic scanners couldn't tell the difference. The atmosphere in that structure was perfectly suited for human life. The proportions of the figures in the murals match human proportions exactly. Captain, what if we're not newcomers to this galaxy? What if we're coming home? Before Sarah could respond, Lieutenant Torres called out from his station. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups from the structure. Something's happening. On the main screen, they could see the ancient station beginning to glow. Lights that had been dim were growing brighter. Sections that had appeared dead were coming to life. The structure was waking up. Are we causing this? Sarah asked. I don't think so, Dr. Martinez replied, studying her readings. The energy pattern started when the hegemony ship arrived. It's almost like the structure is responding to their presence. Sarah's mind raced. If Dr. Martinez was right, if humans had built this structure millions of years ago, then what other secrets might it hold? And why was it activating now? Captain, Commander Brooks said urgently, the hegemony ship is powering weapons. I think they're spooked by what's happening to the structure. Sarah made her decision. She couldn't hand over what might be the most important discovery in human history, not to a species that considered humans primitive newcomers. Disconnect from the station, take us to a safe distance, but don't run. Not yet. Captain, Torres said, the hegemony commander is hailing us again. Put him through. Zethka appeared on screen again, but this time his golden eyes showed something Sarah hadn't seen before. Fear. Human vessel, what have you done to the structure? He demanded. We haven't done anything, Sarah replied honestly. The structure began activating on its own. Impossible. That structure has been dead for millions of years. Our scientists have studied it extensively. It shows no signs of active technology. Maybe your scientists were wrong, Sarah said. Zethka's forearms gestured angrily. You dare suggest that hegemony science is inferior to human understanding? You primitive creatures who have barely learned to travel between stars? I'm not suggesting anything, Sarah said calmly. I'm simply stating what we can all see. The eye. Structure is active and we didn't activate it. Behind Zethka, alarms were beginning to sound. Sarah could see crew members rushing around the alien bridge. Something was happening on their ship, too. Commander Zethka, perhaps we should work together to understand what's happening, Sarah suggested. Our species may approach science differently, but we both want to understand the truth. The truth, Zethka said slowly, is that you humans are more dangerous than we realized. First you trespass in our space, then you awaken ancient technology that has slept for eons. The High Council will hear of this. The High Council? Sarah asked. She had heard of them, the ruling body of the hegemony made up of representatives from all 12 species. Your actions here today have consequences beyond your understanding, Zethka continued. The High Council will decide what to do about the human problem. Until then, you are forbidden from leaving this system. Commander, you can't hold us here without cause. We haven't broken any galactic laws. You have awakened something that was meant to stay sleeping, Zethka said. That is cause enough. The transmission ended again, but this time Sarah wasn't worried about diplomacy. She was thinking about what Dr. Martinez had said. If humans had built this structure, if they had once been part of a great civilization that spanned the galaxy, then maybe they had also built defenses. Doctor, how long would it take to fully analyze the data we collected? With our current computers? Several days? Maybe weeks. But Captain, there's something else. The structure's activation seems to be following a specific pattern. It's not random. What kind of pattern? It looks like a startup sequence, like the structure is preparing for something. Sarah looked at the ancient station on the screen. It was glowing brighter now, and she could see movement in some of the sections. Whatever was happening, it was big. All right, people, we're staying. If the hegemony wants to keep us here, then we're going to use the time to figure out what this structure really is. "Captain," Commander Brooks said quietly, "what if they bring more ships?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we better hope our ancestors built this place to last." She didn't know it yet, but her words would prove more prophetic than she could possibly imagine. The structure was indeed preparing for something. And when the hegemony's reinforcements arrived, they would discover that some things were better left undisturbed. The ancient station continued to grow brighter, and deep within its core, systems that had waited millions of years for the right genetic signature finally began to respond. Humanity's children had returned to the stars, and the galaxy was about to remember why that mattered. 3 days had passed since the confrontation with Commander Zethka, and the Defiant Echo remained in orbit around the ancient structure. During that time, the station had continued to awaken. Entire sections that had been dark for millions of years now pulsed with energy. Sarah could see lights moving through corridors and chambers that no living being had walked in ages beyond counting. "Captain," Dr. Martinez called from her science station, "I'm getting some incredible readings from the structure. It's not just activating, it's scanning us." Sarah looked up from the report she was reading. "Scanning us how?" "Deep, biological scans. It's reading our DNA, our brain patterns, even our blood chemistry. It's like it's trying to confirm something." "Confirm what?" "That we're human. Or at least, that we're genetically compatible with whoever built this place." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The implications were staggering. If this structure was indeed built by ancient humans, then their species had once possessed technology far beyond anything the current galactic community had achieved. "Any luck decoding the data we collected?" she asked. "Some. The symbols we photographed appear to be a form of writing, but it's not like any human language. Yet the mathematical concepts underlying it are familiar. It's as if the same minds that developed human mathematics also developed this system." Before Sarah could respond, Lieutenant Torres called out from his station. "Captain, I'm reading multiple hyperspace signatures approaching, a lot of them." Sarah's blood ran cold. She had been expecting this. The hegemony rarely acted alone when faced with something they didn't understand. "How many?" she asked. Torres bent over his console, his face pale. "I'm reading—" "Jesus, Captain. I count over 300 ships dropping out of hyperspace. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships. This isn't a patrol fleet. This is an armada." Sarah moved to the main viewport and looked out at space. She could see the flashes of light as ships materialized from hyperspace. Each flash brought another vessel, and they kept coming. The sky filled with alien warships until it looked like a metal storm had descended upon the system. "They're taking positions around the entire system," Commander Brooks reported from Tactical. "Whatever they're planning, they want to make sure nothing escapes." "Captain," Torres said, his voice tight with fear, "I'm reading heavy ships in that fleet. Planet killers. Weapons that could crack a world in half." Sarah stared at the growing armada in disbelief. "They're willing to destroy an entire system to stop one human ship?" "It's not about stopping us," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "It's about making an example. They want every species in the galaxy to know what happens when you defy the hegemony." New voice came over the communication system, deeper and more authoritative than Commander Zethka's. The translation made it sound like the voice of judgment itself. "Human vessel, this is High Arbiter Vexthon of the Hegemony Fleet. You have 30 minutes to surrender unconditionally. Prepare to be boarded." Sarah straightened her uniform and nodded to Torres. "Put me through to the fleet commander." The main screen shimmered and showed a bridge unlike any Sarah had ever seen. It was massive, with stations arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. On that platform stood a being that made Commander Zethka look small. The High Arbiter was nearly 4 meters tall, with skin like polished metal, and eyes that glowed with their own inner fire. This was one of the Eternal Ones, the oldest and most powerful species in the hegemony. "I am Captain Sarah Chen," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "High Arbiter." Surely this situation doesn't require such an overwhelming show of force. Vexthon's laugh was like metal grinding against stone. You dare question the decisions of the hegemony? Your species exists in this galaxy by our sufferance alone. You have violated our territory, awakened forbidden technology, and shown arrogance beyond measure. The time for talk has ended. Forbidden technology? Sarah asked. You mean the structure we discovered? That construct has been sealed for millions of years for good reason. It represents a threat to the natural order of the galaxy. By activating it, you have proven that humanity cannot be trusted with knowledge beyond its understanding. We didn't activate anything, Sarah protested. The structure began awakening on its own when your ships arrived. Lies, Vexthon said flatly. Our scientists have studied that construct for centuries. It has never shown any sign of activity. The fact that it responds to human presence only proves that your species has some connection to the ancients who built it. This cannot be allowed. Sarah felt pieces clicking together in her mind. You've known about this place for centuries? You've been studying it? The construct is one of dozens scattered throughout the galaxy. We have spent millennia ensuring they remain dormant. They represent a power that predates the hegemony, a civilization that nearly destroyed the galaxy with its arrogance. What civilization? Who built these structures? Vexthon's glowing eyes fixed on her with contempt. You truly do not know. Your primitive species stumbles blindly through the galaxy, awakening nightmares it cannot comprehend. The builders called themselves the first seed. They claimed to be the origin point of all sentient life in the galaxy. Sarah's mouth went dry. First seed? They spread across the galaxy like a plague, seeding worlds with their genetic template, building impossible structures, claiming dominion over all they surveyed. When they finally fell, the galaxy breathed free again. We have spent 10,000 years ensuring their legacy remained buried. And you think humans are connected to them? I do not think human. I know. The genetic markers are unmistakable. Your species carries the template of the first seed. You are their inheritors, their living legacy. And like them, you represent a threat to everything we have built. Sarah looked around her bridge at her crew. These people were her responsibility, and they were facing an enemy that outnumbered them thousands to one. But they were also possibly the inheritors of a civilization that had once ruled the galaxy. High Arbiter, she said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? Surrender. Your crew will be detained and studied to determine the extent of the genetic contamination. Your ship will be destroyed. The construct will be sterilized with nuclear fire to ensure it can never awaken again. And if we refuse? Vexthon's smile was cold and terrible. Then you will share the fate of your ancestors. This Armada carries enough firepower to turn this entire system into cosmic dust. We will not make the mistake of allowing the first seed to rise again. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at a dark screen. Around her, the bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems and the quiet beeping of sensors tracking the massive fleet that surrounded them. Captain, Commander Brooks said quietly, we could try to run. The structure might provide some cover. They have us surrounded, Sarah replied. And even if we escaped, where would we go? They'd hunt us across the galaxy. So what do we do? Torres asked. Sarah looked at the ancient structure on the screen. It was glowing brighter now, and she could see what looked like docking bays opening along its surface. Whatever the structure was preparing for, it seemed to be getting ready quickly. Dr. Martinez, you said the structure was scanning us. Did it find what it was looking for? I believe so. The scans stopped about an hour ago. Since then, the energy readings have been increasing exponentially. What's your best guess about what it's doing? Dr. Martinez studied her instruments. If I had to guess, I'd say it's preparing its defenses. The energy patterns match what I'd expect from weapons systems charging up. Sarah made her decision. It was probably the most dangerous choice she had ever made, but it was also the only one that offered any hope. Take us back to the structure. Find one of those docking bays that just opened. Captain? Brooks asked. If this structure was built by our ancestors, and if it's preparing to defend itself, then maybe it will defend us too. And if you're wrong? Sarah looked at the sea of alien warships surrounding them. Then we die fighting instead of surrendering. I'd rather go down as the crew that faced impossible odds than the ones who gave up without trying. The defiant echo turned toward the ancient structure, moving slowly through space like a child seeking shelter with its parent. Behind them, the hegemony Armada began to move into attack formation. High Arbiter Vexthon watched the human ship approach the construct and felt a cold dread settle in his chest. He had studied the records of the First Seed. He knew what their structures were capable of when fully awakened. "Begin bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy them before they can reach the construct." But even as the order was given, Vexthon suspected it was already too late. The construct was glowing like a star now, and deep within its ancient corridors, systems that had waited millions of years were finally coming online. The galaxy was about to remember why the First Seed had once ruled it, and why they had been so dangerous that an entire coalition of species had united to bring them down. The first wave of hegemony fire lit up space like a deadly aurora. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the defiant echo as it raced for the ancient structure. Sarah gripped her command chair as the ship shook under the impact of near misses. "Shields down to 60%, Commander Brooks reported. They're targeting our engines." "How long until we reach the structure?" Sarah asked. 2 minutes at current speed," Torres replied, sweat beading on his forehead. Sarah watched the docking bay growing larger on the screen. It was massive, easily large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of the defiant echo. Strange symbols glowed around its entrance, pulsing in rhythm with the structure's awakening systems. "Captain," Dr. Martinez called out urgently, "the structure is responding to the attack. Energy readings are spiking across the entire construct." On the screen, Sarah could see sections of the ancient station beginning to glow with new intensity. What had looked like decorative panels were shifting and changing, revealing what were clearly weapon emplacements. The structure was transforming from a dormant relic into something else entirely. "Incoming!" Brooks shouted. A massive energy beam passed so close to the ship that the viewport automatically darkened to protect their eyes. The beam continued past them and struck the structure's hull. Sarah expected to see damage, but instead, the beam simply disappeared, absorbed by the ancient metal without leaving so much as a scorch mark. "Did you see that?" Torres asked in amazement. Before anyone could answer, the structure responded. A pulse of energy erupted from its surface, not aimed at anything in particular, but simply expanding outward like a wave. When it reached the nearest hegemony ships, they simply stopped firing. Their weapons went dark, their engines shut down, and they began to drift. "What just happened?" Sarah asked. Dr. Martinez was frantically checking her instruments. "Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but unlike anything I've ever seen. It didn't damage their ships. It just turned them off." The defiant echo reached the docking bay just as more hegemony ships opened fire. But this time, the structure was ready. Points of light appeared across its surface, and from each point, beams of energy lanced out with impossible precision. They didn't destroy the attacking ships. They simply made them stop. "It's disabling them," Sarah realized. "The structure is neutralizing their weapons without killing them." The ship settled into the docking bay with a soft thud. Immediately, a barrier of energy formed across the entrance, sealing them inside. The bay filled with atmosphere, and lights came on throughout the vast space. "Captain," Dr. Martinez said in wonder, "the atmosphere is perfect for humans. Temperature, pressure, oxygen content. It's exactly what we need." Sarah stood up from her command chair. Outside, the battle was continuing, but they were safe for the moment. Through the energy barrier, she could see the hegemony fleet regrouping for another assault. Dr. Martinez, Commander Brooks, you're with me. We need to find out how to communicate with this structure. Torres, you have the bridge. The three of them made their way to the airlock. The bay outside was enormous, with corridors leading off, in multiple directions. The walls were covered in the same symbols they had seen before, but now they were glowing brightly and shifting in complex patterns. It's like the whole structure is trying to talk to us, Dr. Martinez observed. They chose the largest corridor and began walking. The passage was clearly designed for beings of human proportions, with handholds and steps placed exactly where humans would need them. It was like walking through a ship designed by humans, but built with technology far beyond anything Earth had ever produced. After several minutes, they emerged into a vast chamber filled with floating holographic displays. The displays showed the space around the structure, with each hegemony ship marked and tracked. Sarah could see tactical information, ship specifications, and what looked like battle plans. "This is a command center," Brooks said in amazement. In the center of the chamber was a raised platform with what was clearly a control console. As they approached, the symbols on the console began to change, shifting from the alien script to something that looked almost familiar. "Captain," Dr. Martinez said excitedly, "those symbols are becoming more human-like. The structure is learning our language from our brain patterns." Sarah stepped onto the platform and placed her hands on the console. Immediately, information flooded her mind, not words or images, but pure understanding. She could sense the vast intelligence that ran the structure, ancient beyond measure but somehow familiar. It felt like coming home. The voice that spoke in her mind was warm and welcoming, like a parent greeting a lost child. "Welcome, daughter of the first seed. We have waited so long for your return." Sarah gasped and staggered back from the console. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Brooks asked. "The structure. It spoke to me. It called me daughter of the first seed." Dr. Martinez was studying her instruments frantically. "Captain, when you touched the console, your brainwave patterns changed. You were interfacing directly with the structure's computer systems." Sarah approached the console again, more carefully this time. When she touched it, the voice returned. "You are in danger, young one. The hegemony seeks to destroy what they do not understand. Will you allow us to protect you?" "Protect us how?" Sarah asked aloud. Images filled her mind. The structure's defenses coming fully online, weapons that could reach across star systems, shields that could protect entire worlds. But also something else, a network of similar structures throughout the galaxy, all waiting to be awakened. "Your ancestors built us to guard this galaxy until humanity was ready to reclaim its birthright. The time has come." Sarah pulled her hands away from the console, her mind reeling. "Birthright? We never ruled the galaxy. Humans evolved on Earth." But even as she said it, she remembered Dr. Martinez's findings. The genetic compatibility, the familiar proportions in the murals, the way the structure responded to human presence. "Captain," Brooks called urgently, "you need to see this." Sarah turned to see the holographic displays showing the space battle outside. The hegemony had brought up their heaviest ships, massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets. They were forming a battle line and preparing for a concentrated bombardment. "They're going to try to destroy the structure," Brooks said grimly. Sarah looked at the displays showing thousands of hegemony ships arrayed against them. Even with the structure's defenses, the odds seemed impossible. But then she remembered what the voice had told her about a network of similar structures. She touched the console again. "How many others are there? How many structures like this one?" "Thousands, across hundreds of systems, all waiting for the command to awaken. And you can control them all? We are all connected, all part of the same network, all ready to serve the children of the first seed." Sarah looked at her companions. Dr. Martinez was studying readings that defied everything they knew about physics. Commander Brooks was watching the tactical displays, his soldier's mind calculating odds and strategies. "Captain," Dr. Martinez said quietly, "if this structure is telling the truth, if there really is a network of these things throughout the galaxy, then we're not just talking about one battle. We're talking about changing the balance of power for the entire galaxy." "The hegemony has ruled for 10,000 years, Brooks added. "They won't give up without a fight. If we do this, if we activate this network, we'll be starting a war." Sarah looked at the displays showing the massive fleet arrayed against them. "I think they've already started the war. The question is whether we're going to fight back." Outside, the hegemony dreadnoughts opened fire. The combined firepower of 1,000 ships focused on the structure in a display that could be seen from orbit. Energy beams that could melt mountains struck the ancient hull in a continuous barrage that lit up the system like a new star. But the structure held. Not only held, but began to respond. Sarah felt the platform beneath her feet vibrate as massive systems came online. Through the console, she could sense the structure's weapons charging, building to levels of power that made the hegemony bombardment look like flashlights in comparison. "They're making a mistake," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Brooks asked. "They're attacking first. Whatever happens next, history will record that the hegemony fired the first shot." Sarah placed both hands on the console and opened her mind to the structure's vast intelligence. "Show me what you can do. Show me what my ancestors built." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, on worlds the hegemony had never even discovered, ancient structures began to wake up. Defenses that had slept for millions of years came online. Weapons that had been built by a civilization that had once ruled the stars powered up for the first time in eons. And in the space around the ancient station, reality itself began to change. The structure's true weapons weren't energy beams or missiles. They were something far more fundamental, the ability to manipulate the basic forces that held the universe together. Space twisted around the hegemony ships, time moved at different rates for different vessels, and gravity became a weapon that could be aimed and fired. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before found themselves caught in impossible geometries, their crews experiencing effects that, 6 months after the battle that shattered the hegemony's greatest armada, Captain Sarah Chen stood in what had once been the High Council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime. The massive circular hall that had housed the representatives of 12 species for thousands of years was now filled with delegates from over 100 worlds, all seeking audience with humanity's reluctant ambassadors. Sarah wore her uniform, but it had been modified with new insignia that she still wasn't comfortable with. The golden symbol of the first seed, a spiral galaxy with a single star at its center, marked her as one of the inheritors, the humans who had activated the ancient network and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Captain Chen called Ambassador Veltara, a Krathan diplomat whose insect-like features were arranged in what Sarah had learned to recognize as extreme nervousness. "The Outer Rim Coalition wishes to know when humanity will establish trade agreements with the independent worlds." Sarah rubbed her temples. 6 months of nonstop diplomacy had given her a permanent headache. "Ambassador, as I've explained before, humanity has no desire to establish an empire. We're still trying to understand the network we've inherited." "But Captain," interrupted Senator Kicksmoth of the former hegemony worlds, "without central authority, the galaxy is falling into chaos. The Void Walkers have declared independence. The Seltani are fighting among themselves. The old order is collapsing." "The old order collapsed the moment the hegemony decided to threaten a peaceful human vessel," Sarah replied firmly. "We didn't ask for this responsibility, but we won't abandon the galaxy to war." Dr. Martinez approached from across the hall, carrying a data pad and looking exhausted. Over the past months, she had become humanity's chief xenoarchaeologist. leading teams that were studying the ancient structures throughout the galaxy. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said quietly. "Privately." Sarah nodded to the assembled delegates. "Ladies, gentlemen, and others, we'll continue this discussion tomorrow. I need to attend to urgent business." The various aliens filed out of the chamber, many of them bowing or offering gestures of respect that still made Sarah uncomfortable. When they were alone, she turned to Dr. Martinez. "Let me guess. Another structure has activated?" "3 more, actually. That makes 47 structures now online across the galaxy. But that's not why I needed to talk to you." Dr. Martinez activated her datapad, and a holographic star map appeared between them. Hundreds of points of light marked the known first seed structures, connected by lines that showed the network's communication pathways. We've been analyzing the data from the structures, trying to understand what really happened to the first seed civilization. Sarah, they didn't disappear or die out. They left. Left? Left for where? We don't know. But the records are clear. About 3 million years ago, the first seed made a decision to abandon this galaxy. They put their structures into hibernation mode and departed for somewhere else. Sarah stared at the holographic map. But why? They had technology that makes our best science look like stone tools. Why would they leave? According to the records, they were searching for something. The documents call it the Great Purpose, some kind of universal truth or meaning that they believed existed beyond this galaxy. They left the structures behind as a legacy, I suppose, for whoever came after them. And that's supposed to be us? Genetically, yes. The first seed seeded this galaxy with their template before they left. Every humanoid species in the galaxy carries some of their genetic markers, but humans are the closest match. We're their designated inheritors. Sarah walked to the great windows that looked out over the capital city. Below, she could see species from dozens of worlds working together to rebuild infrastructure damaged during the collapse of the hegemony. It wasn't perfect, there were still conflicts and tensions, but it was better than the rigid hierarchy that had existed before. "Dr. Martinez, do you ever wonder if we made the right choice? 6 months ago, we were explorers. Now we're supposed to be galactic leaders." "I think about it every day," Dr. Martinez replied. "But then I remember what the galaxy was like under the hegemony. Species enslaved or exterminated because they didn't fit the approved template. Knowledge suppressed because it threatened the established order. At least now, every species has a voice, even if they don't always use it wisely. Democracy is messy, Sarah, but it's better than tyranny." A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to the chamber. Sarah touched a control on the wall, and the massive doors opened to admit Commander Brooks. He had been promoted to Admiral and now commanded the small but growing fleet of human vessels that worked to maintain peace throughout the galaxy. "Captain, Admiral," he said, saluting both women, "I have news from the Outer Rim. The situation with the Void Walkers has been resolved." "How?" Sarah asked. "Turns out they weren't actually rebelling. They were trying to protect a first seed structure that the local hegemony remnants wanted to destroy. When we explained that the structures were now under human protection, they agreed to negotiate. Any violence? None. The mere presence of one of our ships was enough to end the standoff. Word has spread about what happened to the hegemony Armada. Nobody wants to test the ancient weapons." Sarah nodded, but she felt troubled rather than pleased. The galaxy's fear of the first seed network was keeping the peace, but it was still fear. She had hoped for something better. "Admiral, what's the status of the integration program?" Brooks consulted his datapad. "Better than expected. 17 former hegemony species have requested to join the Galactic Council. The Seltani have agreed to share their hyperspace technology in exchange for protection. Even some of the Eternal Ones are talking about cooperation instead of domination. And High Arbiter Vexthan? Still in custody on his home world. His own people are keeping him there. They're afraid that releasing him might anger humanity. Sarah frowned. I don't want the galaxy to be afraid of us. Fear is what the hegemony used to maintain control. Captain, Dr. Martinez said gently, the difference is that we're not using fear to oppress people. We're using it to prevent oppression. There's a distinction. Is there? Sometimes I feel like we're just the new hegemony with better intentions. Sarah, Brooks said seriously, I've been to a dozen worlds in the past month. I've seen what's happening out there. Species that haven't been allowed to develop their own technology for thousands of years are building their first starships. Worlds that were strip-mined for resources are being terraformed back to life. Art and music and literature are flourishing again. Yes, they're afraid of the ancient weapons, but they're also hopeful in a way they haven't been for millennia. Sarah walked back to the star map, studying the network of connected structures. Each point of light represented not just a weapon, but a repository of knowledge that had been hidden from the galaxy for millions of years. Mathematics, science, philosophy, history, the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that had reached heights humanity could barely imagine. Dr. Martinez, have you found any clues about where the first seed went? Any hints about this great purpose they were seeking? Some. The records mention other galaxies, other realities. They seem to have believed that the universe is much larger and more complex than even their advanced science could comprehend. They were searching for the fundamental truth that underlies all existence. And did they find it? We don't know. The records end when they departed. But Sarah, there's something else. The structures contain navigation data, star charts for galaxies beyond our own. If we wanted to, we could follow them. Sarah felt a chill at the thought. Humanity had just inherited one galaxy. The idea of reaching beyond it seemed almost impossibly ambitious. One galaxy at a time, Doctor. We have enough to deal with here. A new chime sounded, this one more urgent. Sarah touched the communication panel, and the voice of Lieutenant Torres came through clearly. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission. From Earth. President Williams wants to speak with you immediately. Sarah sighed. Earth's government was still struggling to understand humanity's new position in the galaxy. They wanted to claim authority over the first seed network, but Sarah had made it clear that the structures responded to individuals, not governments. Put her through to my office. I'll take it there. As Sarah walked toward the door, Dr. Martinez called after her. Sarah, whatever Earth wants, remember that you're not just representing humanity anymore. You're representing the idea that power can be used to protect instead of oppress. Don't let them forget that. Sarah nodded and left the chamber. Outside, the corridors of the former hegemony capital were filled with beings from across the galaxy, all working together to build something new. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was progress. In her office, President Williams appeared on the holographic display, looking tired and frustrated. Captain Chen, Congress is demanding answers. How long do you intend to operate independently? When will you bring the alien technology back to Earth for study? Madam President, Sarah replied calmly, the first seed network isn't human technology that can be moved around. It's a living system that spans the galaxy. Our job is to protect it and use it responsibly, not to exploit it.